when I think about LinkedIn, one of the things that excites me about this company is that it has a very big vision. Tim Draper was talking about like shoot for the stars, right? This is a big vision, create economic opportunity for every member in the global workforce, all 3 billion of them. Now, LinkedIn is much smaller than that today. We are mostly focused on the professional segment, which is a smaller segment of the working population. But still, this is our long-term goal. In 10 years, we want to be able to do this. And the way we do it is by building the global economic graph. We talk about the economic graph as not just a network of people, 450 million members globally, but also all the companies where those people work. All the jobs they have, and all the job openings that are out there, so we can connect members with jobs. All the skills they need to actually get those jobs, and the schools where they learn these skills. This is a digital overlay, if you will, of the global economy. We can start charting the relationships between these various entities and drive some really interesting insights at various levels. Insights for our members, insights for companies, where to locate, for example, an R&D center based on the type of skills that are available in a certain region. Insights for policymakers, how to attract certain types of talent. What are the skills that are missing in a certain labor pool in a certain region so that you actually can cover all the needs that employers have in that region, and so forth. As I mentioned earlier, when I was kind of waiting for the charts to got a little bit ahead of myself, LinkedIn is a global network. We're also present in regions where traditionally Western social networks are not able to play it. For example, China, where we recently passed 23 million members. In Europe, the EU28 member count at this point is almost 110 million. In EMEA, we actually have approximately 130, so roughly a little bit more than the United States at this point. So a global network, also employee base. We have 9,000 employees around the world, more than 2,000 in Europe, 1,000 in Dublin alone. And many people in the audience will be familiar with LinkedIn as a consumer platform. The thing that you do when you go on LinkedIn, you connect with people, you look at their profiles. Many of you might be users on the commercial side, either recruiters or for marketing or sales. But I want to talk today about some of the insights that we should drive for policymakers and a lot of NGOs and international organizations. This year alone, we have 4 big initiatives that are mentioned here. The first one is the Economic Graph Challenge. We work together with 7 of the leading research institutions in the country to actually drive insights out of our data that can actually help our members find jobs. That was the charter of these teams. We got 8 patents out of this, very successful, a lot of teams participating, a lot of good ideas. We just authored a report with the WEF on the human capital. The first time that this report is actually built on top of actually at-scale data, so data that belongs to LinkedIn, and not just surveys. We work with a number of cities in the US on local workforce employability initiatives. For example, how to identify the skills that are necessary in the workforce of tomorrow, and then connecting potential learners of those skills to the community colleges in the region. And then finally, the last one, labor market insights, which is something that I wanted to talk about today. And the labor market insights are useful not just for companies and policymakers, but also for individuals. For example, last year, my cousin's daughter decided to study philosophy in Italy, in Milan, at the Cattolica University. And so she was asking me, well, I love philosophy, I want to study this, but what are my job options when I leave college? And so together we went onto LinkedIn on the alumni tool, and you can actually search for the graduates of philosophy degree from that university and look at those people, where they work, what type of careers are they in. And she was surprised by the insights that she actually can get there in terms of finding people who are engaged in PR and media and marketing and so forth. So we build a lot of products for our members that actually help them make smarter career decisions and learn, for example, the skills that they need for the careers going forward. For governments and policymakers, we actually build a number of reports. We partner at different levels of government, regional insights, which is what I will mention today in the next few slides, as well as at the national level and also at the city level. So you can do these analytics at all levels of kind of geographic granularity. Let me just skip over here and talk a little bit about what type of analysis we do. We use mostly the profiles of our members, the stuff that people put on their public profile, their experience in the workplace, education experience, and then the skills. And then we also look at the transitions between jobs. When I moved to Silicon Valley 5 years ago to join LinkedIn, I was coming from Atlanta. For me, it was a career change from being in management consulting and going into an internet company. Back to the roots, if you will, but definitely a big change. And our members do this every day. Thousands and thousands of people move regions. And so we try to track the same in Europe. We looked at, well, what do the pattern flows look like when you look at it on a global basis? This is a global picture. Interesting insights here. Everybody knows about talent moving between the US and Europe and India. But look at South Africa, for example. I actually wouldn't have guessed that there's so much talent moving across regions there. Or Nigeria, or Brazil. A lot of movement that happens that is kind of invisible if you don't really look at it through the lens of big data. How can this be useful? Well, it could inform immigration policy, for example, or it could inform economic decisions in these countries, which are either the sources or the destinations of the talent flows. So for the European Union, just as an example, I pulled up 4 interesting facets, 4 questions. Really 2, right? The first 2 items here are, where's the tech talent flowing? We looked only at tech workers, by the way, in this next few pages, just to constrain the analysis a little bit, also because of the audience that I have here today. All of you are involved in technology. So where are the talent flows going in the EU? Where are they coming from? And where do recent graduates actually go? And how do they think about their jobs? And then we looked at skills. And we looked at what are the skills that these technology migrants, if you will, carry with them. And what are the skills that are needed in those local markets? And are they actually covering for those skills? Are they actually managing to satisfy the demand that's out there? Just a disclaimer. Just as we were talking about Crunchbase disclaimers, same here. First of all, LinkedIn is a member-first company. So whenever a member decides to put their data private, we don't use it. Also, if the data is such a limited number of data points are available that you could be able to trace it back to an individual, we don't use the data, we discard it in these analyses. We want to make sure they're fully anonymous. Second, this is really a LinkedIn database, so you need to be interpreted in the right way. It's just not the analysis. You actually need to think about if this makes sense or not in your specific setting. And then the numbers are directional. You shouldn't be treating them as absolutes. But still, really interesting insights. So we cut the European continent in 6 regions. Northern Europe includes also Germany, the German-speaking markets. And then we started looking at talent flows between these regions, right? And so the first one that was pretty interesting is of the people who leave a member state, of the tech workers who leave a member state, and this was done over a period of 2 years, to be able to track longitudinal trends. Of those people, approximately half of them go to another member state, but half of them go somewhere else. That was actually very interesting. People coming to the US, 15% of the tech workers who leave the US, who leave a member state in Europe, come to the US. I'm one of them, not in this group of users because I came here much earlier. But I think that's pretty interesting to look at the trends here. Also over time and how they develop. This is something that we can do in real time. This analysis was done 1.5 years ago, so the data is slightly dated, but we can actually notice these trends pretty much real time because the update of the profile happens immediately. Second interesting insight is of the people who actually stay in Europe after moving, approximately 30% go to the UK and Ireland, a small country, but still attracting a lot of technology talent. 20% go to Northern Europe. So a full 50% goes to those few countries, Germany, UK, Ireland, and the Nordics. This is actually pretty interesting because it actually shows that these are the hubs, so to speak, or the attractors of technology talent. And it really reflects the status of the economy and also intuitively where the hotbeds of innovations are, especially in the technology space. If you look at net flows, this chart shows the regions that are net beneficiaries from technology flows versus the countries that are actually providing the source of these flows. Again, this is pretty interesting data. raises a lot of questions about what's the role of those southern economies in terms of creating the talent which then immigrates and goes somewhere else. As well as it's a testament to the working of the single market. This is what it's supposed to be. People freely moving between countries and going where the opportunity sits. So a lot of potential implications here for the people who are managing the workforce investments in these different countries and also the mobility laws. Again, this is pre-Brexit, so the UK and Ireland, my numbers might change, or they might not. If the UK government is smart, they'll keep on the open borders for this type of workers, right? Interestingly, if you actually look at people who leave different regions, they go to different places. People from the UK and Ireland end up going very often to the US or India. People in Southern Europe tend to go to the UK and Ireland or Northern Europe, as well as the Eastern Europeans. So those flows are different depending on where they start, and they end up in different places. If you look at recent graduates, these are people who recently graduated in the last 5 years from a tertiary education degree. Very similar numbers, actually higher numbers than the slide before. So full 60% end up in those first two regions here. Again, raises questions about how do you actually create a labor force that's flexible enough to easily go to different countries and speak the other language, for example, right? As well as how do you make sure that the countries that are losing this talent actually get some kind of benefit from training all these people in their universities. And the skills is really the critical component here, because you can talk about tech talent, but people are not all the same. They're all different, and they all know different things. And so it's different if you are a data analyst in a certain industry or a software engineer in a different industry. And the skills are actually what defines you as a professional. So this chart actually shows the skills in this room. What we did, we took all the member profiles of the people who signed up to the conference, and we looked at what are the typical skills that are on their profiles. I think it reflects pretty well on the audience in this room. A lot of strategy management, business, analytics, technology skills. Again, this is an eye chart. Let's actually put it to use. Let's make some useful information out of this. So here's an insight. If you look at the title of a worker, which is a data analyst, you might think all data analysts are the same. They all work. They do the same type of analysis. And you look at the skills they have, and you take data analysts on the left-hand side in two different industries. The first industry is oil and gas, energy, and the second one is market research. On this chart on the left, you'll see that the overlap of skills actually of the same title, of the same person, data analyst, very different. So a data analyst from market research will have a really hard time repurposing and going into different industry like oil and energy, right? On the flip side, data analysts in finance and retail are much more similar in terms of the skills they have, the tools they know how to use, the mathematical concepts they possess, and so forth. So there is actually more fluidity in the transition between retail and finance in this case on the right-hand sides here. Again, can be very useful if you're thinking about a region which has a legacy of certain types of industries that are transitioning. How do you think about the type of new businesses you want to try to develop there without forcing people to actually move away from their homes? And if you look at the skills of the migrants, the ones we were looking at earlier, the people who left one of the member states in the European Union, the top 20 skills of these technology migrants are actually things that are in very high demand. And you shouldn't be surprised. You should just ask anybody in the valley if they could put their hands on one of the engineers who has these skills. Really, really hard right now, even here. And this is something that pretty much shows that the migrants are actually people who are responding to opportunities. If you actually cross this list of the skills they have with the skills that are in demand in the regions they go to, you get this chart, where you see that the people who are migrating, who have these technology skills, are actually responding to real demand in those regions. The bright boxes here are the skills where there is overlap between supply and demand in the places where they go to. So again, you can then say, okay, well, but we're still missing influx of workforce in those few skills that are missing here. How do we actually selectively target people who might have these skills, right? You can advertise for that. You can actually go to the trade conferences where they treat things like data presentation or security. You can go to those regions where they have a lot of security experts, oftentimes in Eastern Europe or Israel, and you can say, okay, why don't you come and actually work here, because we actually have a need. We have a demand for these skills, and there is an unmet need here. So again, useful information that you can use to make decisions at the policy level. But also if you're a company, if you're an enterprise and you're thinking, I need to create a new R&D center for security, where should I put it? And finally, if you look at the migrants, typically they have a higher level of degree of education than people in the overall population in those regions. Again, showing that many of the people who actually move between regions are those who are more likely responding to opportunities and more willing and better equipped to go out and try something different in a different country. So we're getting close to the end of my presentation. I'll stop here. I don't know if you have any time for questions or anything like that, but happy to talk more about LinkedIn, about the way that we do those analyses, and also if there are specific things that are on your mind in terms of using this data, happy to talk about it. I actually will be in Europe next week and the following, so we can have potentially follow-up conversations if anybody is interested. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.